Welcome to this virtual roundtable from Foodservice Consultant Society International, FCSI, focusing on technology and equipment innovation for the future of food service. I'm Michael Jones, Editorial Director for Progressive Content and FCSI's Foodservice Consultant magazine. This roundtable is very kindly supported by the manufacturer Welbilt and will address how new technology and pioneering equipment is helping operators to both diversify and also free up space in food service settings, plus how consultants can help to maximize the potential of that innovation for the benefit of their clients. I'm very pleased to be joined today by our expert panel of two leading consultants, a hugely experienced operator and the CTO of a worldwide manufacturer. I will now ask each of them in turn to introduce themselves and also to tell us a little bit about their business and also that of their clients. Kristin, ladies first, can we start with you, please?
Sure. Hi, I am Kristin Sedej. I'm the president of S2O Consultants. We are headquartered in Chicago, Illinois. We mainly focus on design for food service facilities, and a large portion of our market segment is in these sports facilities, both professional, collegiate, and large venues.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kristin. And Lenny?
Hi, I'm Lenny Condenzio, CEO of Ricca Design Studios, and we cover all markets from higher ed to hospitality, healthcare. We do design and also a little bit of MAS consulting, a little bit of interior design as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lenny. And Rick?
Hi, everyone. I'm Chief Innovation Officer for Welbilt. We're a global company traded on the New York Stock Exchange. We've got about 20 design centers around the world. My job is always thinking about the future, where the industry is going. I love food, I love people, I love equipment, and I love how it all comes together. And so I really enjoy these kinds of sessions because our ideas really come from stimulating the brains of our customers and our ecosystem of consultants. So I really look forward to this.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rick. And Peter?
I'm Peter Cryon, Senior Director of Equipment Innovation for Inspire Brands. If you're not with Inspire Brands, we're a multi-branded concept. We have currently 5 brands, started with Arby's, which is kind of the foundation of Inspire. Soon became Buffalo Wild Wings. Then we changed the name to Inspire Brands back in 2018. And since have purchased Sonic, Jimmy John's, Rusty Taco, which actually came with Buffalo Wild Wings. And we're just on the cusp of closing on Dunkin' Donuts, or Dunkin' Brands, because that also includes Baskin Robbins. So I lead all of our equipment innovation and testing. What's unique about Inspire Brands, probably unlike any of the other multi-branded companies or parent companies will say, is that Inspire is leveraging and creating these centers of excellence where we're sharing technologies, where we're sharing innovation, where we're sharing discipline.
Peter, staying with you, can you give us an overview from an operator's perspective of the type of technology and food service equipment that for you has really changed the game for your business this year, and tell us how it's made a difference?
Yeah, well, this has been a trying year, right? And so we've spent the first half of the year, and I would say we're still trying to figure things out, but I would say the first half of the year, we're just trying to figure out how to work through this COVID thing and get the business back going again. And we've been fortunate enough that 4 of our 5 brands have actually gone back positive, and we're looking very, very good from our business model. Of course, it helps being in the QSR industry, but a couple of our brands are leading in those areas in the industry. And so I say that only because it brings different challenges, right? And so I wouldn't say so much new technology that we've been able to integrate this year, as much as really just new processes and ways of doing business that we've been focused on, getting the drive-through to be able to really maximize throughput and speed and focus. Drive-through's always been important to us. But it's a whole nother game when it's 100% of your business now, right? And so then also third-party deliveries, right, and third-party pickups. So the technology that we've kind of been working on, I would say, that we are rolling out this year is technology that allows the third-party deliveries to be able to integrate with our POS system.
Lenny, let's bring in your perspective as a consultant. Peter alluded to some of the big challenges that his brands have faced this year, of course, because of the pandemic. What are some of the biggest challenges your operator clients are currently facing? And while obviously there are no silver bullets here in terms of how technology can help operators to differentiate what they do, how have you seen different processes, different pieces of technology help clients to diversify their offering and adapting to, say, different models?
Well, the biggest challenge that I believe my clients are facing is having the knowledge of everything that Peter just said in terms of the technology that's available out there, and knowing that they need to implement much of that in order to capture customers. And if it's in the retail world, it's about capturing the customer, then up to them if they can't dine in and have to remain contactless, if you will. And also in higher ed and healthcare, how to reach out to those customers. And then with regards to if we ever go back to normal, several months ago, that was a conversation. What do we do in terms of going back to normal? And are we going to over-design now and bring in items that, technology that we don't really need in the future? And what's really evolved, and I always felt it would, is even going back to normal in-person dining, all of that technology has been talked about for 10 or 15 years, and COVID-19 made everyone say we got to implement it now. And because of the convenience of, grab and go and robotics, and because of the efficiency that technology brings, and because of offering more access to more customers that technology brings, I think it's here to stay with us in addition to the in-person dining. So it just spreads that capture for that marketplace. And we're seeing that and hearing that already in higher ed, that what was once inconvenient is perceived now as so convenient in terms of grab and go and access and all. It's never going to go away.
Kristin, you have, I think there are some crossover in terms of the clients that you have with Lenny, but also presumably a different set of clients as well. Do you concur with the experience that Lenny was describing there? What's been the experience of the challenges that your particular clients have faced?
I do. I think one of the points that Lenny brought up that hits home is, when it comes to food service, you're constantly trying to figure out, how do we maximize labor? How do we increase throughput, and how do we deliver a product efficiently and safely? So with COVID, what we've been seeing a shift in the sports industry into different technologies in order to accomplish all those things, right? And when he mentioned the grab and go, and how do we, there's ways to transfer labor to the consumer. So some of the things we were seeing in sports were like remote soda. When you go to McDonald's, you go to Jimmy John's, everyone has remote soda stations. Well, COVID hit and says, well, is that going to be safe? Is it not? The questions. But then we start seeing the manufacturers coming out with touchless situations. We were seeing things to help from the labor and throughput standpoint, switching from traditional concession stands into different technologies. There's just walkout technology that's out there today. So we can talk about some of those a little bit later, but I absolutely agree that COVID has pushed us to implement things that we've been talking about for a long time that are not going to go away. And with that, it's the technology and the transfer of labor to a consumer that we're seeing make that happen.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kristin. Rick, let's focus on one particular aspect of technology that your company, Welbilt, has developed, and that's hot holding. How big is the potential for new innovation there in terms of how an operator can cut and hold protein products or sandwiches, for example? How has it solved challenges that operators have encountered, particularly in this year?
I think it's huge. I think it's potentially 4 to 5 times bigger out in 2025 than it is today as a category. And I can explain why. I'm an engineer by training. And so when you look at food, and food that's ready to go to the consumer, it's really alive. It has a temperature. It's undergoing mass transfer with the environment. It's losing moisture. Texture is changing. It's very dynamic. And there's 4 fundamental variables that affect the quality of food and how long you can hold it. And we all know about the first one, temperature. And so back in the day, holding was about, just keeping food at temperature, which was basically a heated surface or a heated box. But when you really get into the variables, you can create enormous extensions to hold time and quality. So the next one we tend to sort of all know is air velocity. Air velocity affects food, heat transfer to food. It affects how crispy fried product is. And then we get into humidity. Humidity affects actually the mouthfeel, the crunchiness of food, the moisture of the food. Well, that all affects the thermodynamics around food. And the last one is mean heat flux, mean radiant heat flux to the food. And so, it's cold, you go out here in the sun hits you and you feel warmer. And so now with the electronic controls technology, those 4 variables can be optimized for different food types to drastically extend the quality window and the time window. So from the operator standpoint, holding is going to stay and it's going to grow, because even with accelerated cooking, if I can cook, or toast a sandwich in a minute and a half, it's not fast enough for the drive-thru. I mean, speed of service at the drive-thru is sacrosanct. And so some amount of holding and linking these technologies into the business, I think is going to drastically change the size of this category. Our latest innovation actually uses tray tracking with RFID tags, so we can actually track the food, around the kitchen to help operators better manage the whole time and the overall production schedule.
Thank you, Rick. Peter, Rick mentioned that he feels that sort of the potential that technology like that offers could make that kind of market potentially 4 or 5 times bigger in something like 2025. A big area of potential. Do you agree with that? Do you agree that sort of technology can change a market that much?
Yeah, I do. We could split hairs on the numbers, but I definitely think that the platform and the technology is extremely important. Look, we all want quality, right? And that's why we want to cook less more often or cook fresh to order. But the reality is the challenges, particularly in QSR or fast casual even, is staffing, right? Staffing and throughput. And what hot holding technologies, some of the new technologies that Welbilt, Marco, and there's a few others as well that are working on, is helping us improve that quality so that we can maximize the throughput with the minimum staffing that we have. Because the fact of the matter is, pre-COVID, let alone post-COVID, 80% of our restaurants out there are short-staffed. It's getting tougher and tougher to staff restaurants today. In the early days, we were talking about, trying to automate and come up with things to lower, replace staffing because the hourly rate was going so high. Now it really doesn't matter what the hourly rate is because there's empty spots there that we need to fill. And so what we've been able to do with some of this technology is significantly improve our throughput. Significantly, while not losing, in fact, not only not losing quality, but improving our quality. For example, we're using the technology and we're serving a sliced roast beef that's about 15 to 20 degrees hotter than what it was before slicing fresh off the slicer. So we see a huge improvement in that, an opportunity with that to help throughput, help maximize that quality, and help with the staffing needs that we need. So I think it's a big technology, a big platform. And the RFID piece of it is even, that's just magical. RFID's been around forever, right? But imagine having an RFID that allows you to move product from the back of the kitchen to the production table, and that product has a time and temperature. Everything follows that pan when you transfer it and then move it to another cabinet. We just love it. It's working really good for us.
Fantastic.
Great to hear, Peter. You're making me hungry.
Lenny, that kind of innovation that Rick and Peter were just talking about there, can you see how those kind of tangible benefits could be harnessed for clients and projects that you work on? How can you see those being realized?
Well, definitely be realized because, when we hear about maintaining quality or improving quality, having a tremendous throughput and access to more people, definitely here to stay. And I think it just begs us to talk about IoT, the Internet of Things, and tying in the very thing that everyone carries around, right? That communication aspect built into everything that Peter talked about helps the customer be a part of that success, of the quality and the access and the speed of service and so on. And it really comes down for me as a consultant to figure out, along with manufacturers and R&D aspects and all, how to make this easy and streamlined for the end user, meaning my client that wants us to design any specific facility, how to build that into the design. And I've already been telling, I'm probably giving away the secret, I've already been telling my folks that we can no longer say we don't spec it. We no longer can say we don't, we only do food service equipment, because technology is so much a part of all of that, that it is part of that realm. And the future will be brighter if all of us could package a concept, if you will, that is easy for those clients of ours in higher ed, in healthcare, in hospitality, to see the features and benefits of that. And more importantly, the affordability, or in fact, how they could possibly go on without spending the money for that. So,
brilliant. Thank you, Lenny. Kristin, Lenny was just talking there obviously about how the end user, the customer, is often kind of being the catalyst here for a lot of these changes. So you have a lot of experience, as you mentioned, in helping to implement new technology into the sports venue segment specifically. So how can new tech, you mentioned it, just walk out technology, JWO, self-service kiosks, remote ordering and pickup, how can technology like that, which is customer driven, help a client to establish a point of difference over a competitor?
It's a complete blend of operations and technology, right? You know, as Peter was talking about, you know, how do you take these apps, integrate them into your point of sale system so that you can control your labor and your food costs, and it all starts to go together, right? So when we start talking, you know, we had one client that was willing to, actually they designed an app that was integrated with the point of sale system, was integrated with the digital menu boards, which was also remote ordering. So, you know, it gets to be halftime, third quarter, they realize, you know, let's say they have a bunch of extra hot dogs that they've made that day, to keep it simple. They can also do a flash sale on hot dogs, send it out to everybody on this app, that they can also drop the price, which then integrates with the point of sale system throughout the course of a 70,000 seat facility, and sell. So you improve your product, you improve your labor costs, you know, and that's a direct integration between an app, the point of sale system, and the food service equipment, and how you do that. We're seeing it in the remote ordering. How, you know, the hard part when we do large projects is that when you start design to when it's built, you could have a 2+ year span. So when we start talking about, you know, you have to think for the future. So, you know, some of the things we're doing now in sports is, you know, even if it's a traditional stand where everyone, like McDonald's is a prime example, everyone walk up perpendicular and order across the stand. Then you see McDonald's now ordering on one side, and then you pick up on the other. Well, that type of layout lends itself wonderfully to a remote order pickup situation. So if the client wants to then go further into the technology, because 2 years from now, it's not going to be the same as it is today, we've started to build the infrastructure there that they can implement things that come along down the road. And lastly, the biggest one is just putting this big toe in the water, as we talk about that just walk out technology, where literally you walk into a space, you grab what you want, and you come out, and it's transactionless. So many conversations on going cashless. Yep. In order to do that, that's technology. You know, the pros and cons for that affects the infrastructure. And again, all of these things not only improve customer experience, but they can also save on the labor, which then becomes more profitable down the road.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kristin. Rick, one part of the sector that has seen exponential growth in recent years, but particularly this year, is ghost kitchens or dark kitchens, cloud kitchens. How has that growth spurred innovation even quicker particularly from your point of view, from an R&D point of view, the need for more ghost kitchens. How has it kind of kept you guys on your toes in the R&D department?
Wow, it's like a tailwind to our business, and not only on our toes, but we got to put on special running shoes. It's funny because you look at this as a category, and it's pretty well predicted, the size of ghosts with Euromonitor, Technomic, $1 trillion a year in food service by 2024, 2025. And so when we started seeing this trend, the traditionalists said, well, you're too excited. This is really nothing but a commissary kitchen, same old, totally different. And the answer has to do with the integration and smart cloud based systems. The integration that's happening in these ghost kitchens is unparalleled. And what does that mean? The equipment is coming together, working as an operating system. And it's all controlled from smart cloud system. The back of the house kind of is the front of the house, right? Because a lot of this is pickup. It's completely fungible around brands. And they want to design the equipment to be future-proof. So the flexibility of the equipment in terms of what it can do, bake, broiling, roasting, poaching, just by changing the digital information to the equipment is really key to them. And so that spurs innovations across multiple fronts. So of course we need to have, the best categories, fryers, ovens, grills, all that. But we're not going to make it to the future just by investing in fryers and ovens. We need to look at how these come together. And the biggest innovations are at the intersection of these categories and how they're controlled inside the kitchen itself. So it keeps us on our toes. It's very, very active. And I don't think we've seen completely where this is going to go. From a menu innovation side, it's really spurring menu innovation because now we've got all these new entrants coming in that don't have kitchens that are creating these beautiful culinary experiences that are enabled through shared resources in these cloud kitchens. And these new businesses don't even have any bricks and mortar, right? They create their menu, they have their website, they contract with curbside delivery, they get a cloud kitchen or a ghost kitchen, and they're in business in a month. So it's a pretty amazing thing.
Peter, Rick used an interesting phrase there, shared resources. You mentioned right at the top of this, you talked about the Inspire Brands as centers of excellence. Could you talk a little bit about what is Inspire Brands' strategy with regards to implementing new technology and when you do it? So do you look to unify any equipment technology across, say, any new acquisition such as Dunkin', or do you treat every operation completely separately? Is that what differentiates, say, an Arby's from a Jimmy John's?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the answer is both. Each of the business models have their own needs and where they're at. And while they can all benefit from the same technology in a lot of cases, even, sometimes there's something that's a higher priority because they're further behind on something else and another brand is a little further ahead. And so, Jimmy John's, we've got a lot of opportunity with labor. They have their own delivery people. They spend an enormous amount of time prepping and slicing and things of this nature. And so we're treating them a little different from some of the technology needs because we need to help. We're working with equipment solutions for them to help be more efficient with their work that they're doing. And then, Arby's is super advanced when it comes to IoT and smart kitchen and stuff. That platform Rick and I were talking about earlier is connected to the cloud. Our cooking platform is connected to the cloud. So we've got a lot of IoT stuff already going. Sonic has got a lot of neat technology in a couple different areas. But so the answer is we do treat each one differently in the sense of identifying what their bottlenecks are, what are their problems, what are their needs, right? But what's nice about the Center of Excellence is we've got a team that has done that somewhere else with one of the other brands and now can move very quickly to help them versus them having to build that all up from scratch, right? And then there's other things that it does make a whole lot of sense for shared synergies. Delivery is a big one, right? Delivery, third-party pickup. We talked about the walkout lockers. everybody is getting food picked up. So that's one that, whether you're helping with Arby's or Buffalo Wild Wings, a sports bar, Buffalo Wild Wings food menu is picked up 300%. We're working very diligently and I think very smart and not throwing too much up on the wall for all the brands to tackle at one time. Very, very strategic in how we approach that. But that is the big benefit of Inspire, is to be able to leverage that across where we can, where we need to.
Peter, staying with you and staying with strategy, is a period like this year where we've experienced protracted lockdowns, do you see that is that actually a good time to invest in new kitchen equipment while you actually have some more time and access to a space without customers? Or have you always advocated a sort of fix the roof while the sun is shining approach? Is it always a good time to invest in new equipment?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's a tough answer, because you could see pros and cons to both. One, if business is down, in some cases, then you don't have the capital to invest, even though you might have the time to do that. And then you got COVID here. We've actually had some things that we have tried to do some work in the restaurants, and there's a big concern about suppliers coming in and vendors coming in doing work and during a COVID situation, and what kind of risk that brings. But we've done a little bit of both. I mean, the brands that are hot, Sonic, is up double digits. Arby's is up double digits. We've had to do some of that work, and some of the other brands like Buffalo, that's the dining rooms have been more closed up. It's been a little tougher to do that. So I think if it's outside in front of the house, then you can get away with that. If it's back of the house kitchen, then if it's in operation and running during this pandemic, that may be something to be concerned about, having folks come in and out with the risk that's involved.
Thank you very much, Peter. Rick, a question back to you. How does Welbilt work sort of in concert with operators such as Peter, but also with consultants like Kristin and Lenny? How do you get their feedback and implement that into product development? How do you sort of keep close to them?
Yeah, well, it's our lifeline, because, first of all, as it relates to operators, we don't run restaurants. We make food service equipment. And so to understand the pain points of the operators is really what drives where we focus on innovation. So we need to work hand in hand. We encourage all of our engineering staff across the globe to spend time working in restaurants. So, the people that design a filtration system for a deep fat fryer, they learn a lot when they go into a restaurant for a week and run a deep fat fryer. And so our insights come from the kitchen, and that's really where the rubber meets the road in terms of innovation. And I spent a lot of time in kitchens, and it's pretty amazing. You could be there for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and something happens. A disruption happens. And every one of those is an opportunity for innovation. As it comes to consultants, I wish we could say we're as vibrant over the last decade as we were with the chains. But in the last year, we really decided that was a big area that we missed. So we've assigned a senior staff person, Kirk Goss. He's working much closer with the consultants. We have much visibility. And I think the key message there is for the consultants to sort of skate to where the hockey puck is going to be, right? Because some of these projects don't come to fruition for 2 or 3 years. And when those products do, they should be using equipment that's going to be more relevant in that time frame. So by understanding the product roadmaps, the product strategies, you're designing a project for 2025, we should be using equipment that's relevant 2025, not equipment that's out there today. And the last point I would say is, and I think connectivity is somewhat there in that, right now it represents single digits in our business. We're, $1 billion plus company. So, but it's doubling every year.
Yeah. And
so I believe for consultants, it's important to understand that if you're specifying equipment that's not connected, it's going to be a dinosaur in, a few years' time. Our equipment lasts 10 years. And so why buy equipment that's not connectable. Now, I know there's a lot of aftermarket ways to connect, and that's all good, but it is cumbersome and it adds costs. And so I think for the consultants, for me, it's all about understanding where the projects are, working with them strategically, and understanding the time phasing around the development of the products that are in our product roadmaps in the same temporal fashion as the manifestation of the projects that are going on in the industry.
Thank you, Rick. Lenny, could you give us the consultant perspective from that? And are the clients that you work with on your projects, are they generally receptive to cutting edge innovation, that, as Rick said, the kind of technology that's going to be valid for 2025? Do they see the benefits?
Absolutely. And all of our clients are quite sophisticated these days, very different from 15 years ago, where we had to, make them see the benefits of a combi oven, for example. And that sounds so funny now when you talk about all this technology. But all of our clients are well aware of all the technology that's out there, the robotics. And the reason for implementing all of those in terms of quality, speed of service, helping with the labor situation, and evaluating all of the cost efficiency. So almost a bit of a challenge for us, because we're supposed to be the thought leaders and ahead of all of this and stay ahead of this. And we are. We think we're doing a good job of it. But it's a different environment now, because what it had turned into is, instead of informing folks about new technology and what's out there, it's more important to be ready to talk about how all of that technology actually translates into a design solution that solves their specific need. And those conversations are pretty robust.
Thank you, Lenny. Kristin, your clients, often a lot of those are in the sports venue industry, as you mentioned before. How receptive are they to things like Rick was talking about, connected technology and energy efficient technology? How are you able to communicate those benefits, or is it more of a challenge, or do they get it straight away?
I think every project, I don't think that there's a standard answer for any of this. Every project, every budget, every goal is different, right? I mean, when Lenny talked about us being educated and working, with Welbilt and understanding what's out there, understanding who the client is and how sophisticated they are. I wish I could say all of my clients are sophisticated. I cannot. You can have the best ideas in the world, but if you have the human face to it. And if the person, and maybe the people that I'm dealing with on the design side understand it. But if it gets down to the person on Friday night who's working that location and doesn't have the buy-in into it, it all falls apart. So there are big layers from who pays for the project, who the client is, right? We can get into all of that. But I think there's no doubt that I think what you've heard from everybody, there's universal issues that need to be solved. We have labor issues, we have food quality issues, we have throughput issues that we're trying to solve. That by the very nature of itself, one's where technology starts to come in and be helpful. So if you can come in, like Lenny said, and if something worked for Peter on this job, we can talk about, our job is to, I think, help explain how some of this is applicable to them in this scenario, why it would be beneficial, why it might be cost productive, and then see if we can convince them to do it, but also listen. One of the examples I think about here is we've talking about things, opportunities in technology and the world changing. We've all mentioned delivery, but I see there's this huge hole in how food goes from the restaurant and gets to the consumer. There is such an opportunity for us to increase that piece of the, whether it's a third party or whether it's Jimmy John's where you're doing it directly, that's cold. But if you have a hot product, or how does the hot stay hot? How does the cold stay cold? And I think the person that can start to come up with the equipment that can make it so that when that is delivered to the end user and it's hot or cold, the first person that can come up with that on a consistent basis is going to be a game changer. And that's technology with a lot of different people involved. So I think at the end of the day, we need to keep getting educated, and we need to keep passing the education along to our clients.
Peter, one of the topics we've discussed briefly so far is contactless technology, both in back of house and front of house operations. How specifically is Inspire Brands investing in contactless, and do you see more rapid growth continuing in contactless and specification of contactless technology?
Yeah, I do. I see a lot more growth in that area, and Inspire Brands certainly is investing into that, and we're doing a lot of research. We're doing a lot of R&D work and testing and design. And, think about this. I mean, you've got Uber Eats, you've got Grubhub, you got 3 different companies you're contracting with, 3 different tablets, and then you got a POS and you got to ring the order up in. And so how do you know, when the orders are coming through, if you're not paying attention and keeping up with that? So being able to take all that and put it into one and then have it go into the POS system is going to be an amazing thing. So that's a big one for us. But then there's the whole, again, the locker thing, I think, is a big opportunity. Hot holding, a lot of people putting things out on the sort of a shelf out into the lobby where customers come pick up their food, right? And so what we're looking at is, locked up lockers that, they got the code, they punch the code in and pops the door open and they take the food out. It's hot. I love Kristin's comment about solving for hot food staying hot in the delivery piece. So I throw a challenge out to the team over there at Welbilt to find a solution and work with the Uber Eats and the Grubhub and all these third-party companies to keep that food hot when it gets to where it goes. Again, back of the house is still kind of the drive-through as well, if you want to call that front of the house. A lot more efficiencies. Think of some of the great work Chick-fil-A has done around how they've been able to expand their drive-through and their throughput. There's a lot of opportunity there to enhance that experience, to increase that throughput. Then lastly, I would say automation in the back of the house. I think the restaurant industry is very behind in automation, whether that be through IoT and having to walk around with a clipboard and things of that nature. We've done some of that. We're going to continue to do more of that. How can we tap into some of those things? I think that's a big opportunity because all that's contact. That also helps with the efficiency of things and the throughput and the consistency, as well as helps with some of the staffing opportunities that there are in trying to get folks to work in these kitchens.
Brilliant. Thank you, Peter. Lenny, did you have a view on that question at all?
Well, I wanted to build on that because you know how we said a lot of the front of house technology has been talked about for quite a few years, and this crisis has forced it to fast forward and go into implementation. And what you just touched on is, and we see this in a lot of the brands, all that front of house has happened. And while you're saying it's an opportunity for the back of the house, I think it's going to force us to say, okay, how do we get the back of the house to catch up with what we just did in the front of the house? And, we're talking about looking at the back of the house as a combined system for delivery. I think that challenge is upon us now. It certainly is with us consultants to say, okay, how do we make sure the back of the house is providing that efficiency that is required to deliver on the front of the house, and it's here now.
Aside from the pandemic, what other factors are driving the expansion of technology in your team? What other catalysts are there behind the effort?
I mean, there's quite a few. So this back of the house becoming the front of the house, I won't dwell on that, but it's certainly happening. Another big area is just open innovation. So, the industry has been siloed, a lot of competitive rivalry, but I think the companies that are out in front realize that they need to be part of a co-opetition model. So we cooperate with competitors while we compete in a healthy way. And that ranges from sharing knowledge to having open platforms for connectivity. It's a big deal. The industry is consolidating. It's going to continue to consolidate. And so that continues to give rise to all sorts of new opportunities for us. So those are some of the areas that, I think are really key in an industry that I think is not going to bounce back to the way it was. It's going to bounce forward to a new industry covering some of the topics we discussed here today.
Interesting on what you said. And what we can't forget, though, in the food service industry is that flexibility is also the key word to any success, because what's hot now is not going to be hot tomorrow. So you go from macro to micro. When you go micro to something that's fixed for this solution, which automation does, it tends to be more micro. But yet you also have to look at your operation and be able to shift 5 years from now into something new. So that's always a challenge, how specific and efficient do you get, but yet can you swing over here without gutting the place and starting over?
Yeah.
Nail it right on the head is we need equipment that is flexible and I won't regurgitate what he just said, but that is flexible and can do multiple things. And that's definitely something we're looking at as well. And then one other thing I would just add is on the packaging end. Packaging is a huge opportunity. We're actually looking to create a department just for packaging engineering. And because with third-party deliveries, the packaging back in the day was just as cheap as supply chain could get it, stick your logo on it, right? And now, with packaging having to travel and keeping hot food hot and allowing a little bit of steam out so it's not, soggy and, all the science that goes behind whatever particular type of food you're trying to carry is a big deal as well. And I think it's a huge opportunity. So we're working and looking at that very heavily.
Sounds exciting. On the subject of exciting, a final question for you all. I'd like to stay with you first, Peter, but we'll go around to all of you. Can you all just tell me which particular piece of technology are you most excited to see rolling out in the future? What do you think is the genuine game changer that's kind of genuinely exciting you? Peter, can we go with you first, please?
Ooh, man, there's some good stuff out there. I tell you, I'm still an Internet of Things with the smart kitchen. I see such an opportunity with that because we've done it really well at Arby's. We're still expanding it, and of course, we're going to do that with the other brands. And just some of the success that we've had with it, while the industry is still far behind, I know we could have even more success. And what I mean by that is a lot of the manufacturers that are not building equipment that communicates not just to the cloud, but to each other, right? And so some things we've been able to do, we've been able to reduce energy significantly. In fact, at Arby's, we've reduced energy by over 30% with the Internet of Things. We've been able to automate reporting and archiving reports that make it so easy when the health department is challenging you on something. We can dial right in and look at the walk-in box or look at the cooking platform. We've been able to reduce labor significantly. We've reduced labor $10,000, $15,000 a restaurant. Do the math on that. Just because of the Internet of Things that we've been able to automate, things that we've been able to cook overnight and now come in the next morning a little later than what we were doing before. We've improved food safety. We've got alerts going. And I feel like every time I hook something new up, I find something new, like performance, even like with equipment. We're seeing some opportunity where we can improve equipment performance. And now we've got analytics working with some of this information so that we can sort of create the algorithms that we need to know when equipment needs proactively service and things of that nature, whether it be PMs and such. So I think the Internet of Things is way behind in the restaurant industry. And I think it's got a lot of uphill opportunity there to max out on.
Huge ceiling of potential there. Rick, how about you? What's the equipment or the particular type of technology that you're most excited about?
Well, I mean, there's no question that IoT is big in 2021. No question at all. And if you look at that from the broader convergence of technologies that are going to change the whole industry over the next 5 years, it all comes down to sort of a simple concept that you can't control what you can't measure. So there's so much that goes on in the industry, in the restaurant, that's not measured. So it's not closed loop control. So we got 5G that over the next few years is going to quadruple in speed, right? So then, these devices, it's like having a beam network of data running to them. Cloud, we're all familiar with. That's going to become more pervasive. So it enters every one of our new projects. IoT is taken off. So that's one of the 6 that are converging. And then AI. AI was going to be really huge. Yeah. And so, we're starting to put AI in appliances. We've got one on a fryer now where we can predict the quality of the oil without actually having a physical sensor. And then we don't talk too much about blockchain, but it's coming. So by the end of this decade, I think 90% of the fresh food supply chain in North America will be on blockchain. That's a whole different subject, but that basically ensures tremendous safety, traceability, and attack proof. And then what I think is going to be big is augmented reality. And we're using that in our service today, but just using simple devices to help operators basically run their business better through superimposing images using their smart devices as they engage. And I also think that's going to have an impact on the consumer side, right? Because if you scan these QR codes now, and you can go on an experience of where your food came from as you're enjoying the food. So I think it's the convergence of all of these things. Nobody can predict exactly, but they're all going fast. And this next decade is going to be tremendously exciting.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rick. Same question to you, Lenny. Are you more excited about the convergence of this technology or specific aspects of it?
Well, I wish I went before Peter, because I prepared for this with all about the IoT and the Internet of Things. And what I'm excited about is knowing, and I did some research on this, and knowing all the 89 or so startups out there that are measuring labor, measuring food waste, connecting equipment and all of that. And it just gets mind-boggling. So I'm looking forward to the day when we can pretty much just kind of Google the question and get the answer by pulling all that together.
Same question to you, Chris.
Market specific right now, I think the just walkout technology is pretty incredible. Again, we're just starting with that. But that in conjunction with all of the other things that we're talking about, the holding capabilities, because in a just walkout technology, again, kind of born from COVID, born from throughput, labor efficiencies, but you can still have hot food being cooked. You can still see that. But when you're talking about how you're holding it, how can you bulk up? Those kind of, those operations work from a food safety and quality standpoint from the equipment that's holding the food, right? But the ability, so to do that, to have it fresh, to go in, and to be able to walk out without any cash, without any cashiers, without the infrastructure, I think is pretty amazing and starts to solve a lot of all the questions, in the food service industry, really, quality, throughput, labor, costs, and then with that, the data that comes along with everything so if you're able to read something walking out, what is all that data that's also sending to your systems that you can then, as an owner or an operator, then disseminate and figure out, what you want to do, what's moving quicker, what's not. It really allows you a lot of data tracking too. And then the customer walking out, built into that same thing, we can go back and have the QR code on it potentially, that they can then get all that information they want to. So the ability, because of technology, to have this holistic experience, but yet be cost effective and a better quality product, it's kind of exciting.
Well, on that hugely positive note, we shall leave it there. This has been such an absorbing and fascinating discussion with some serious insight from my guests, Kristin, Rick, Peter, and Lenny. I'd like to thank you so much for taking the time and giving us the benefit of your estimable knowledge. I'd also like to thank Welbilt, of course, for their continued support. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and please stay tuned to fcsi.org for future events. Thank you.